Hey, this is Jason Kleberg from the Force 5 podcast, a show that forces a guest to come up with a movie-themed top 5 list topic, and then we reveal our picks on air. Top 5 heist films, top 5 tearjerkers, top 5 movie dogs. Every show you'll be asking yourself, what would be on my list? Guests include directors, screenwriters, actors, podcasters, musicians, authors, and even a professional wrestler. Subscribe to the Force 5 podcast, and you won't just be a listener, you'll be a list nerd. The Force 5 podcast, available wherever you're listening now.
Hello, filthy movie lovers. My name is Gentry Austin.
And I'm Casey Scott.
And we're the hosts of the Sin Syndicate, film podcast for something weirdos, anti-criterion bros, and Joseph Sarno aficionados. Join us semi-weekly as we peer into the adults-only theaters and sticky-floored cinemas of the golden age of sexploitation, when the morals were loose, the laws were murky, and the intercourse was all simulated. Find us now on the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
I'm Chris Stachiw.
And I'm Sean Leone.
We are joined today by a good friend of the Kulturecast and a podcaster in his own right, Mike White from the Projection Booth podcast.
Hello, hello.
How are you doing today, Mike?
Very good. How about yourself?
I am under the weather. Very under the weather. And when I get sick, I really get sick. So, yeah, not great. Speaking of not great, today we're going to be talking about Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace, the first and second James Bond adventures featuring the steely-eyed, blonde-haired man known as Daniel Craig. But before we get to those films, have you guys been watching anything this week?
I just watched the 3.5-hour epic that is Sholay, one of the most popular Indian films ever made, and I'm going to be talking about that one later on. So pretty much everything I'm watching is podcast-related these days.
I feel you. Podcast-related films, or I'm not watching anything.
Yeah.
That seems to be the case. What about you, Sean?
No, I haven't seen anything new other than what I talked about earlier this week was Ex Machina, which I really liked, but I haven't seen anything other than that.
You haven't managed to watch The Danish Girl yet? Come on.
No, I know. It's on my list, man. I'm telling you.
American classic cinema. It's fine. Just delicious.
Oh.
Bon appetito. Oh, God.
Is that about a girl who's actually made out of a Danish?
Yeah, it's actually about a girl who becomes a pastry at the end of the movie. I would have liked it more if that had been what the film was about.
I was gonna say, I'd like that.
Oh, God. Whatever.
That does sound delicious.
Would have been better than seeing Eddie Redmayne in drag. Oh, God. Or seeing Eddie Redmayne in anything.
You mean Eddie Redmayne?
We actually got a cease and desist letter from his lawyers last week because we brought up the fact that he was in Jupiter Ascending. So we probably shouldn't talk about that anymore. They told us not to mention that he was in that bad movie. Oh, dear God. Oh, man. Well, if we didn't watch anything, let's get right to it. Let's start with Casino Royale. Came out in 2006. It was the first Daniel Craig James Bond film. The film stars the aforementioned Daniel Craig, Eva Green, Judi Dench reprising her role as M, Mads Mikkelsen as Le Chiffre, Jeffrey Wright as Felix Leiter, and Giancarlo Giannini as Rene Mathis. The IMDb synopsis for the film is, armed with a license to kill, secret agent James Bond sets out on his first mission as 007 and must defeat a weapons dealer in a high-stakes game of poker at Casino Royale. But things are not what they seem.
Shares no kills. But to become a 00, it takes 2. How did you die? Your contact? Not well. You needn't worry. The second is... Yes. Considerably.
The man was Le Chiffre, private banker to the world's terrorists.
which would explain how he could set up a high-stakes poker game at Casino Royale in Montenegro. If he loses this game, he'll have nowhere to run. You're the best player in the service.
The Treasury has agreed to stake you in the game. But if you lose, our government will have directly financed terrorism. I will be keeping my eye on our government's money and offer you a perfectly formed house.
You noticed.
Directed by Martin Campbell, who directed this week's earlier film, Goldeneye. Mike, had you seen this film before, and what are your thoughts?
I have seen Casino Royale probably the most out of all of the James Bond films. No, we're talking about the 2006 Casino Royale.
Yeah, we're not talking about that other one. That other one is just a nightmare. An absolute, utter nightmare.
Yeah, I've seen this one the most out of all of them. Just because even with all of the marathon, TNT showings of all the older James Bonds, this is the one that I actually choose to go back to. And we own a lot of these on DVD, but definitely own this one. And once we put it in, we being me and my wife, we end up watching it a few times in a row just because there's something about this movie that I really enjoy. And I just have a great time with this one. And I think the biggest thing, and one of the reasons why you guys might be on my case later on, is that it breaks with all the Bond BS that we've come to know and maybe not love, that it really breaks some new grounds and is a proper reboot of something. And I know that was kind of controversial, but for me, it was exactly what the series needed. What
about you, Sean?
Yeah, I've never seen this movie before either. And I really I think, like you said, Mike, it definitely does switch up. It definitely feels like a modern action movie. It almost feels nothing like a Bond movie from the ones that we've been watching. And I like it. There's definitely a faster pace, a lot more visual effects going on, a lot more action going on. And Bond is edgier than he's ever been before, which I get it. I get why. I like it. I gotta say, because the fact that the whole end of the movie is at a poker game, I kind of loved that. The whole action and suspense built up between poker rounds. I thought that was really fun, considering I've never played poker before.
Oh, Lord. Well, I don't know if Sean's going to be on your case, Mike. But I might.
All right.
This movie is good, but this movie is about as far from being James Bond as I think James Bond ever gets.
Which to me is perfect.
But I get why it's good, and I get why people like it. But I also think that it loses something in translation of what makes James Bond James Bond. It takes the fun out of James Bond and replaces it with this serious, kind of dour James Bond who is more interested in brooding and staring longingly off the screen at something at a fixed point in the distance rather than having fun. It's a fun movie, but it's not, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. I agree. I think that's exactly what.
It's not. I mean, Daniel Craig, he doesn't seem like he's having fun at all in the role. It seems like he's just, I'm just here to be James Bond. I'm not here to have a good time.
But that's what the new action star looks like. I think that's what I sort of mean when it's like, this looks like an action movie, not a Bond movie. You know what I mean?
I got kind of sick of the smarmy Bond. The whole idea of the guy that comes in and he, immediately beds all the women and always has the quip after he kills someone. And what I really got sick of was just those stupid gadgets where it was like, okay, we're going to give you 3 things and you're going to use those at particular places in the plot where we know exactly when you're going to use those things. And I like that the gadget that they give him in this is like a defibrillator. It's like, okay, perfect. And yes, he is kind of brooding, but I also think that he broods more in the second movie than he does in the first one. The first one, I think, still has some fun to it, though he ends up losing the girl, which I think really kind of makes the brooding a good thing towards the end of the film. I wish he had not brooded through the second film, but the first one, I think, hits all the notes perfectly.
It's this Dark Knight, Jason Bourne-ification of every single fucking action series that I think is just so trite and played out. That the fact.
Have you ever wanted to dive deeper into the horror movies you love? Beyond the Blood is a horror podcast for fans who want more than just surface level screams. We do deep dives into the movies that shaped us, digging into director commentaries, behind the scenes stories, deleted scenes, and the special features that most people skip. Each episode is a love letter to the genre. We break down how these films were made, the creative risks that paid off or didn't, and the lasting impact they've had on the genre as a whole. From 70s slashers to modern nightmares, we celebrate the craft, chaos, and characters that keep us coming back. If you're the kind of fan who rewatches movies with the commentary on, or you simply grew up in the video store horror aisle, the Beyond the Blood podcast was made for you. New episodes every single week. Subscribe, and let's dig deep. Welcome to the Beyond the Blood podcast.
The fact that James Bond becomes this to me was a little astounding, if that makes sense. Like, to me, I was a little surprised that James Bond became Jason Bourne, because that's the closest thing to this film.
I don't think that I can see exactly where you're coming from, and I think that things like Austin Powers had happened and things like Jason Bourne had happened. So the more that you became or stayed with the old Bond, the more it felt like a parody to me. Like those last few Pierce Brosnan films felt like they were jokes that nobody really knew that were jokes. And I'm laughing at things in the movie because they're reminding me of things like a Dr. Evil would say or an Austin Powers would say. And yes, I can see where you're coming from as far as James Bond now lives in a Jason Bourne world, a world where Jason Bourne has happened, so they had to shift the character, and I can see where that would upset people, but I really like that. I like that they were pushing these buttons, and I like that they were going off in this other direction, that you can have these action set pieces like the opening parkour scene and everything, but you can also have that poker scene, and I was glad it was poker and not freaking Baccarat, because it's a lot easier to understand poker than it is to understand Baccarat. I also like the whole idea of him just kind of throwing away some of the things as far as like, you know, his whole shaken not stirred and all this kind of stuff. And like the one point when the bartender asks him, you know, shaken or stirred, he's like, do I look like I give a damn? And I'm just like, thank you. You know, I'm so glad that you don't care. And I'm so glad that you have, you know, like he gets the Aston Martin, but it doesn't have like the smoke screen and the oil slicks and all this kind of stuff. It actually has something that is valuable to his life. And I like that he's vulnerable, you know, not just emotionally, but also physically. To have a scene where you see him wiping the blood off, you know, it's like, oh, this is great that he's not just super suave and dashing. Though, again, to your point, I can see where you want to have that suave and dashing thing, but I think we've, again, like you think of all the parodies of that, like even what was that Melissa McCarthy movie, Spy or whatever, with Jude Law, where he's basically playing a James Bond, or even the stupid like Pink Panther films where there's another James Bond type character, and it's just like, yeah, Bond just felt played out to me as that super spy, dashing, tuxedo wearing guy.
Go ahead.
I completely agree. You know, there was a need and a change was necessitated for the James Bond character. I mean, you couldn't, because of all the things you mentioned, you couldn't keep the character the same. But I don't know, just as much as I enjoy this film, which I do like this movie, it just feels so joyless. And like, to me, it's like, oh, look, he's doing parkour. Isn't that cool and hip and with the times? Or look at the, you know, it's like, it's almost trying too hard to be different, and that fails a little bit for me, because it's like, look how cool this stuff is, and when someone's like, isn't this stuff cool, I'm just like, no, like, oh, he's doing parkour, he's jumping off stuff, and it's okay, great, but I mean, it's not like the most exciting thing, and that's to me is the issue, as I think just them trying to show how different they are kind of backfired, because it's like you're trying to be so different that you almost lose what James Bond is entirely.
Yeah, I can see that, but you know, I think of horrible things like those last few Pierce Brosnan films, and I always feel so bad for Pierce Brosnan because first off, I love GoldenEye. I thought that was a terrific film, even though there's some ridiculous things to that where I'm just like, okay, you know, like Denise Richards as the nuclear scientist, those kind of things. That was GoldenEye, right?
No, that was World Is Not
Okay,
Enough.
good. So, all right, that was the one with Alan Cumming and the video games. Yes. So, yeah. I like it even better knowing that Denise Richards wasn't in it. So.
Denise Richards, as a nuclear physicist, is the low point of Pierce Brosnan's time as James Bond.
I still think that Jinx was one of the worst characters ever, but anyway.
Well, I think Halle Berry in general is just, if you have Halle Berry in your movie, God help you.
So I think that he came in when things were just bad with the franchise, and I feel really bad for him with that, because back when Remington Steele was on, I wanted him to be James Bond. You know, he was the perfect James Bond. And then when he finally gets to be James Bond, it felt like he just hit this horrible spot of just bad writing and horrible direction. And I felt that he was above the material. And so I think they kind of had to really go 180 degrees away from that stuff, or else they needed to get that taste out of everybody's mouth as far as what was going on with those Pierce Brosnan films. At the same time, I can see, and I don't know how you feel about these last two Bond films, but for me, they're making me angry because they're going back to the old Bond. They're giving him the gadgets and all this kind of stuff. They're doing all these throwbacks to the old series and everything, whereas I really wanted him to stay away from all of that stuff. So even when it comes to the second film, to the Quantum of Solace, to see Strawberry Fields, horrible name, very much a throwback to the old stuff, to see her with the covered in oil, very much like the girl who was covered in gold and Goldfinger, I was just like, oh man, that's really clunky. And then as they've gone on, especially I think with Skyfall, it just has gotten more and more back to the old Bond. Is that your experience, or is that, or are you just done with Bond after something like a Casino Royale?
Well, I think, you mentioned I think the thing is, for me, is that the campiness and the gadgets and the kind of double entendre names and stuff, that doesn't work in this universe that they've set down.
Right.
Casino Royale. And so the fact that they're trying to do it, and they do it in Spectre more than they do in Skyfall, but they do have it in Skyfall. And this gun that is matched to your fingerprint, which, by the way, was in fucking License to Kill. So don't give yourself so much credit that you think that this is a novel idea. Because it's literally the same thing in License to Kill. Like, this gun is imprinted to your hand. It doesn't make any sense with this Bond, because you've seen two movies where Daniel Craig's Bond is humorless and his quips are minor at best. And then when in Skyfall and Spectre, they're trying to make him a little bit lighter and kind of more self-aware, it doesn't work. It makes no sense. This would have played better with Pierce Brosnan than it does with Daniel Craig, whose Bond in the first two movies is smashing people's heads in the toilets and, shooting them in cold blood in their office. It doesn't make any sense.
I love that he's this blunt instrument, though. I just love that he's just a pair of fists and with very little sense behind it. He almost feels like M's Golem or something, even though he is clever and he does figure out a lot of stuff that the rest of MI6 can't figure out. There's a lot of times where I just feel like he doesn't have that suave attitude, so he just knows how to think with his fists a little bit better than some of these other people. And I appreciate that he knows how to beat the shit out of people, and that he also has the shit beaten out of him, that he's not this infallible guy.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've been talking about with the different Bonds is how much they are a reflection of the time that they're in. And I think that totally makes sense that our Bond is now fueled by rage. I mean, this movie to me felt very post 9/11. It's very much, it's set in some realism with even the motive of the villain. There's a lot of realism to it, and there's such an anger that Bond carries that even M talks about with him throughout the whole movie. Both of these movies. And I think that totally makes sense. It's such a reflection of the catharsis and just how brutal some of these scenes are. It's interesting to me to see it, especially in this and that at this time. It makes sense to me that he would sort of evolve that way.
Well, and Bond has been moving in this direction since Timothy Dalton came on as Bond.
Absolutely.
I think as much as I like Pierce Brosnan was like a step back for Bond, because Timothy Dalton's Bond was as close to this Bond as we've seen. I mean, Timothy Dalton and Daniel Craig's Bond have a lot of similarities. They're both very kind of brutal, and they do what needs to get done regardless of how they get there. I mean, in License to Kill, he frames one of Franz Sanchez's men so he gets blown up in a depressurization chamber. I mean, there's blood and gore in License to Kill that is almost very similar to Quantum of Solace and Casino Royale. But then you have this Pierce Brosnan Bond, which is almost Roger Moore in the 90s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then, I mean, that's why I'm convinced the next Bond that they have is going to be just another Pierce Brosnan or Roger Moore.
Yeah.
It's kind of cyclical, right? It's kind of dark and brooding and serious, and then lighthearted.
Yeah.
And then it's just back and forth, because I think people get sick of one thing and want another thing. Just like people are getting kind of sick of the dark and gritty superhero movie bullshit that they've been doing. I mean, people are going to get sick of this dark and gritty bullshit with Bond, and they're going to want it to be lighthearted and kind of worry-free again. I mean, I think that's what's going to happen. Is what's going to happen 100%? Probably not, but it's going to be a mix of the two more than just what Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace are, which is pretty straightforward and very serious and kind of lacking of any self-aware humor.
Yeah.
I think the one thing that Casino Royale, they don't necessarily hit that level of humor and grittiness very well, and I will definitely give you that. But I like that. I compare this one a lot to On Her Majesty's Secret Service, where I think they did get the humor pretty darn good with that one, especially like breaking the fourth wall about, this never happened to the other fellow kind of thing.
That's right.
But I like that one. I think On Her Majesty's Secret Service is probably my favorite Bond, just because it has the darker overtones. It does seem to have stakes, and it gives us a little bit of continuity, because so many of the other Bonds just feel like, one to another, they're all different adventures. With this new series, with the Daniel Craig films, that last one with Spectre, I really felt like they were trying to tie things together that weren't necessarily supposed to be tied together. I didn't think that it was clever. It just felt very forced. And I like that, the Mr. White character moves from one film to the other. But at the same time, I'm just like, I don't know if I necessarily needed that. I almost do like the idea of these different adventures, and that's one of the things that I liked about the old Bonds that these new Bonds don't necessarily have, is that mini adventure at the beginning of the film, which may or may not have anything to do with the rest of the proceedings, but just to show, here is your James Bond and here's what he's doing. I think they did that the best in Casino Royale, because they were kind of setting up the character and going back with the black and white and really kind of throwing you with that. But in the rest of these films, it just feels like, okay, here's the movie's just picking up. And it's like, no, I kind of want a little bit more of like, just show me a typical day in the life of James Bond.
Well, and that was kind of the strange thing for me, and I think for a lot of people, when you look at Quantum and Casino Royale, is that this is the first time in the history of Bond where Bond is, taking action against what happened in the previous film immediately in the next film. Mm-hmm. It's a direct sequel, and we'd never had a direct sequel ever in the history of Bond up until Casino Royale and Quantum. And then in Skyfall, they touch upon stuff that happened in these films, and then Spectre decides to just retcon everything together and some it doesn't work. And I think that I feel like the serialization of franchises that's a very recent thing that everyone wants to do now, is make it all tied together because of how, successful Marvel Cinematic Universe has been. Everybody wants to connect everything together and make it all interconnected and interweave, and we're going to get a Q spin-off movie. No. James Bond, some of the best things about James Bond was the fact that it was these separate adventures that they stood on their own. You didn't have to watch the next film to understand it.
Yeah, I didn't need the reintroduction of Q. Q was fine just not living in this universe. And his introduction and everything, and I know we're getting off topic. I know we're talking about movies that we're not supposed to be covering. But
I mean, we're I think that talking about these two films, it kind of lends itself to talking about just Daniel Craig's tenure on Bond as a whole.
Yeah. I think it was very important to have the Vesper Lynd character, to set her up as, the great love of his life, to have that betrayal and kind of set him on his path of, just being this kind of lone wolf type thing. But like I said before, I don't necessarily need him taking a whole movie, the next one with Quantum of Solace, to get over her. And though he never really does, there were so many wrong things with Quantum that I just really did not need to have happen.
Well, and I never felt that Bond and Vesper's connection was so deep and,
true,
heart-changing that I was like, oh my God, how terrible that she's, betrayed him. Like, I never got any of that. And I think that is a huge indictment of this movie, is that Bond in Casino Royale and in Quantum of Solace, when we get to it, we can talk about how he interacts with the characters in that film, but I don't think Bond connects with anybody in this film. And I think that, and I know that that's intentional. And you're supposed to see that Vesper kind of cracks the surface a little bit, and she can kind of see who he is as a person a little bit more than everyone else. But I never got that he should give such a shit about her that it's going to completely send him on this, License to Kill-esque revenge film that Quantum of Solace is.
Yeah, I would have been fine had there been no more mention of her in the next film. And I know that sounds very cold and everything, but I just would have been fine with it. She was one of many, and yes, she might have gotten to him, but I just don't necessarily need to see him working that thing out. Let's pick up and move on to something else.
How do you? So you've mentioned the one of many thing, and this is something we've asked some of our other guests during James Bond month about. How do you feel about the idea that each James Bond is just taking up the mantle of James Bond, or do you think that this is all the same guy?
I've never really put too much thought into it. I just assume that it's the same guy. I don't want to say that he's some sort of Highlander-esque immortal, but I just figure that there is always going to be a James Bond, just the same way there's always going to be a Sherlock Holmes, and that Sherlock Holmes can live in the 1800s, or he can live in the 2000s just as easily, and it doesn't necessarily matter, any of that kind of stuff. And there are just certain tropes that go along with the Sherlock Holmes, like having a John Watson, those kind of things. Maybe living on Baker Street, maybe not, but I definitely think that it's just a character, like there can be 1,000 interpretations of Hamlet. I can see there being, a half dozen interpretations of James Bond, and it doesn't necessarily need to be that there is a program out there that trains these, one individual and says, here you go, you're the new James Bond. That might be kind of interesting, but I'm okay with it just being a character that gets played by different actors.
But I think the three of us can agree that this is a full-on reboot of the character.
It definitely seems that way. Yeah.
Okay. Because he attains his 00 status at the beginning of the film.
Right.
So, and I feel like a lot of the problems from this movie, for me, with rebooting the character and making this the first 007 adventure and, yada, 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 all the things that come along with rebooting it, I feel like it doesn't even really work as an origin story, because that's what this is, because it's split up over 2 movies. I mean, this whole story is like 4 fucking hours long because it's split up over 2 movies. I mean, Casino Royale on its own is 2 hours long, and then Quantum of Solace is just shy of 2 hours long. So it is a 4-hour long film that they split up into 2 movies.
I want to say that Quantum is like 2.5 hours or something, or more, like 2:41 or something.
No, it's only 106 minutes, but I will agree with you. It feels much longer.
No, Casino Royale's 144 minutes.
Yeah, and Quantum is 106.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you were saying that Casino Royale was under 2 hours.
No way. Quantum is but I think Casino Royale, on top of everything else, is much too long.
Yeah.
I don't know how you guys feel about that, but there are parts in this movie where it's like, when is, like, I'm checking my watch.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, it goes on for for this story being put over 2 films. The fact that the first movie is 2.5 hours long is a bit much.
Yeah, I was pretty much done before they got to Venice. I was done with Casino Royale. And then it does just keep going. I didn't really even need the death of Vesper and stuff. I could have handled that maybe in the next movie. Maybe that's the mini adventure, is the death of Vesper. Yeah. And then we move on with the story. But yeah, the Quantum of Solace just feels like a whole other movie dealing with things that were from the first movie that I don't necessarily need to deal with. And there's just so many wrong things with Quantum that it's just, to me, it's probably one of the weakest James Bond films. And I'm even counting like, Octopussy and stuff like that. This one feels like, one of the worst.
Well, what did you think of some of the players in Casino? Like, what did you think of Mads Mikkelsen as Le Chiffre? I mean, he's the villain of the film. I say that very lightly because there's no villain in Casino Royale. I don't feel like.
Well, I thought he was great. I loved the character. I loved his cool nature for the most part. I even liked the whole thing of him crying blood. I liked him having the bad left eye, and then his girlfriend, doing her hair the same way to kind of cover her left eye and everything. So I thought there were some very clever things in there, and he's just such a cool cat. I was really okay with it, and I was good with Giancarlo Giannini as being this kind of Confederate and everything. I didn't necessarily like that. I don't like that James Bond was fooled by Giannini, maybe, and Vesper. Yes, it is just like I said before, he's kind of a blunt instrument, but it seems like he would have been more clever when it comes to who he picks for the people that he trusts. Mm-hmm. I really liked Felix Leiter being played by Jeffrey Wright. I thought that he was terrific, but yeah, I can see what you mean as far as like Le Chiffre isn't a typical Bond villain, but I kind of appreciated that.
Yeah, especially for this type of movie where it's a different playing field,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's, it really does just kind of play into the idea that, this is a very different Bond, mm-hmm. because now you have, a villain who, the only physical altercation him and Bond get into is that he's whacking Bond in the balls with this giant monkey's fist knot on the end of a rope. Like that's it. That is the extent of their back and forth is that. I like Mads Mikkelsen. I think that his role in this movie for me is kind of like Sean Bean in GoldenEye, where looking back on it, it's awesome that he's in a James Bond movie, considering how he's Hannibal and he's kind of really come off the screen for a lot of people in past years. But back then it was just kind of, for me, I was like, oh, okay, it wasn't much of anything. But now it's like, oh, that's cool. Hannibal and James Bond, going at it. But yeah, I think that for a film like this, the underserved villain, I guess, does work.
And I like that he's a banker. I mean, of all the villains, the bankers are a lot of bankers these days are villains. And I like that Le Chiffre was a banker, and that he is much more of a cerebral villain, and that his big plans for world domination aren't necessarily, I'm going to release a virus that's going to kill half the world population unless somebody pays me $1 billion by midnight, blah, blah, blah. That it's this whole thing of like betting on the stock market. And when James Bond foils that plan with the plane and everything, it's like, okay, yeah, that works. That's a really clever thing for me in a 2006 movie.
Well, and the idea that he's the banker for Quantum, which would later turn out to be Spectre, mm-hmm. because Quantum is a subsect of Spectre. Having seen Spectre and Skyfall now, looking back on it, on kind of these films, it kind of taints these films a little bit.
Yeah.
For me. Because the story arc is so fucking stupid in Spectre, trying to weave everything together, that these films feel a little kind of, yeah, they do feel cheapened, because you're like, oh, okay, so this is all building to Christoph Waltz's Blofeld. Spoilers if you couldn't have seen that coming from a mile away.
Wait, he plays Blofeld? I thought he played another guy.
Right, Franz Oberhauser, and Benedict Cumberbatch totally wasn't Khan.
Right.
God. These movies feel cheapened because you're like, okay, so this is all tied together by the flimsiest threads known to man.
Yeah, this is that Wachowski effect of ruining the first Matrix by making Matrix 2 and 3.
Right?
Yeah.
And this movie stands really well on its own as a single, a single film. Obviously, the fallout with Quantum notwithstanding, but I feel like this film stands on its own as an interesting adventure if you cut out the Venice part of the film. I feel like the Venice part of the film really is, like you said, what should have been the pre-credit scene of Quantum.
Yeah, we get rid of Vesper because we need to have Bond as this lone wolf character. Bond does need to bed countless women. That is one of the things, of all the things that I say that I dislike about Bond, the gadgets and all that stuff, he needs to be that Lothario. And that's the one thing he starts off as in Casino, and he ends up kind of returning to a little bit in Quantum, but it just doesn't feel right with him having this significant other, so we need to get rid of the significant other.
Well, and, to me, Casino Royale, the ending of Casino Royale is almost shades of On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Right. Oh, yeah.
With Diana Rigg's character just getting shot in a drive-by. That's what the end of Casino really kind of harkens back to, is kind of, here's all this growth that you've seen from the character and now reset.
Right.
Like right back to where we were. But I think for Casino, that whole sequence is just so long. The whole Venice sequence is so long that it just detracts from the film. If they had done it in a quicker way, it probably would have been better.
Yeah.
But because it's like 30 minutes, it just feels so unnecessary for this film that it really hampers the pace of the film and just makes you wonder, like, what? I mean, I get you're trying to set up this whole story, but this is really working against you. So,
yes.
Yeah, indeed. Before we talk about Quantum, because we're going to talk about these films kind of together, something that I've heard from some people that I know that are fans of these James Bond films is how much they don't like the song for this film.
Really?
I really like the song for this one. It's just You Know My Name, right?
Yeah, by Chris Cornell.
If you're looking for more horror outside of the mainstream, look no further than Unsung Horrors, a podcast about underseen horror movies. I'm Lance.
And I'm Erica. Every other week, we'll cover a horror movie with fewer than 1,000 views on Letterboxd. We'll even give you double feature recommendations to pair with the movies we discuss.
From gothic to shot on video, from slashers to comedies, from giallo to J-horror. We'll cover all the subgenres, so join us as we unearth these hidden gems of horror.
Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all at Unsung Horrors, available wherever you listen to podcasts. And part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Yeah, I really liked it.
Yeah, I thought that this was a great one.
Which is a little strange to me because it's one of the few James Bond songs that you can listen to on its own.
Exactly.
And not be like, this is the song from James Bond.
Right, and I like that they kind of call back to that ba-da-da-da-da-da-da throughout the rest of it. And it's kind of the John Barry theme, but a little twisted and everything. And yeah, I don't know. It does definitely stand on its own. It's a whole lot better than that, Sam Smith song from the last one? That was, that was one of the worst songs I've ever heard.
So what are you talking about? It's so good. Writing's on the Wall, Spectre. It's so good.
Writing's on the Wall.
It's you know what the problem is with the new James Bond and Daniel Craig stuff is it makes people who have never given a shit about James Bond love James Bond, and by loving James Bond they love Daniel Craig, and they have no exposure to any other James Bond.
Yeah, that's true.
And that to me is just like a huge bummer.
It's a sellout, but I mean that's
right.
What
it's like I love James Bond movies. What's your favorite one? Skyfall. Have you seen any other ones pre Casino Royale? No, I haven't. Then how can you like? And that's not infuriating to me. It's just kind of like eye roll. I'm just like, all right. But I don't know if that makes sense to you guys.
Why do I have a feeling like in 1970 whatever, people that were like, oh my God, these Roger Moore films, they are just killing it. And nobody even remembers Sean Connery.
I mean, it's kind of the same thing now,
totally,
right? Like, it's my favorite one. Have you ever even seen GoldenEye? Have you seen From Russia with Love? Like, no, you like that to me is kind of the thing that I've taken away from James Bond now is just like, there's so much more to James Bond than these Daniel Craig films. But because of how good these Daniel Craig films are, it kind of overshadows any other good Bond films that ever came out before Casino Royale.
Well, I can see where you're coming from. At the same time, then I wish they wouldn't like throw in old nods to things, because they do that all the time in Skyfall and Spectre, where it's just like, I can use the ejector seat on you, M, unless you straighten up your act. And it's just like, oh yeah, he shouldn't have an ejector seat in his car. That's so lame. Why does it have to be an Aston Martin? Why does it have to?
That's so 50s, man.
Yeah.
That's so or 60s, I guess. That's so 60s because it is.
Yeah.
Like we said, it just doesn't. That stuff doesn't mesh well with the tone of these films.
No.
It just doesn't make any sense. You're just like, I get where you're coming from, and you're trying to introduce the Bond tropes back into these films, but you can't have it both ways. You can't get rid of them.
Yeah, exactly.
And then introduce them 3 films down the road and expect people to not be like, we liked them because these movies weren't fucking stupid with the gadgets and the jetpacks and shit. Like, you can't have it both ways.
And I think that's why Skyfall was so popular, was that they were trying to get back to that old Bond. And I'm like, don't do that. Don't go back to the old Bond.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Keep your tone.
Skyfall. Oh, my God in heaven.
Well, I like the Chris Cornell song way more than that Jack White Alicia Keys song.
I like that song.
Really?
Oh, I do. I really do.
He's so screechy in that one.
Yeah, but that's kind of Jack White's MO a little bit.
I mean, I like the music, but he's screechy and everything, but I think what it is that he seems to be at the same note when he's singing that Alicia Keys is singing at, and it just sounds like they're just saying like at the same note through the entire song. The music I like, but the vocals is just like, would you turn that off?
Yeah, no, I can. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of. Yeah, I can see that. I can see that argument, but I'm like one of maybe 5 people that like that song. I don't know. I think that song might be better than the movie.
No, I won't disagree with that.
The song is better than the movie entirely.
There is little to nothing that I like about the movie. I mean, I really reacted bad to this one and still do. Rewatching it again today, I was just like, this is a piece of shit.
Well, we'll wrap up both movies when we're done talking about Quantum, but the IMDb synopsis for Quantum, which came out in 2008, is James Bond descends into mystery as he tries to stop a mysterious organization from eliminating a country's most valuable resource. All the while, he still tries to seek revenge over the death of his love.
I was always very interested to meet you. I'd heard so much about you from Vesper. If she hadn't killed herself, we would have had you too.
Are you going to tell us who you work for?
The first thing you should know about us is that we have people everywhere.
I thought I could trust you. You said you weren't motivated by revenge.
I'm motivated by my duty.
I think you're so blinded by inconsolable rage that you don't care who you hurt. When you can't tell your friends from your enemies, it's time to go.
So, Mike, you don't like this movie?
Not a whit.
What about you, Sean?
I actually like this movie. But you know what?
Oh, dear God.
Well, it's funny because listening to what you were saying, I'm very much what you're talking about. I am the audience that this wasn't originally meant for, but that can really respond to this. This is totally for like us millennials. But I totally get it. It's not a Bond movie, It definitely isn't. It's not the same, and it definitely is. It's sort of what it feels like is an indulgence of one's emotions, and the whole thing really is. It's just like, let's squeeze as much out of this as we can. But I liked it. It's like, junk food.
I think the biggest fucking thing that this movie does is it wastes Matthew Amalric, who is one of just a breed of fantastic actors. It wastes him in this movie as Dominic Green.
Yeah.
I mean, holy shit. He is like, what is he, just like supposed to be like a little weaselly like businessman? And that's like his character in this movie. It's like Weasel Man. Like, I don't know, because there's no characterization given to his character in the entire film.
He likes to build exploding hotels.
Right? Like that's right. Like that's all I got was like he'll drink oil to kill himself so that he doesn't get killed by Spectre or Quantum or whatever you want to call it.
Even though he still gets shot.
Right? The problem with this movie is, and this is something I've heard from people who are in love with the Daniel Craig Bond films, is that it doesn't feel like a James Bond movie.
Right.
And it doesn't.
It's not, right.
It feels neither fish nor fowl. It doesn't seem to have any kind of point of view to it at all.
Right.
It feels like, yeah, you're right. I mean, it feels like two separate films that are trying to have this through line of Quantum,
right,
or Spectre, because Vesper dies in Casino protecting James Bond from Mr. White and Quantum. And in this film, Quantum is Matthew Almerich's character. He is the head of Quantum, who is a subsidiary of Spectre, and he's trying to extort a South American country out of all of their water. And James Bond is trying to deal with him because of how much he hates Quantum, because Vesper died trying to protect him from Quantum. Is that right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Did I explain that incorrectly? I don't know. That's how convoluted this whole film is.
Yeah. And where the Bond girl fits into this, I'm just like, I'm not really sure what she's doing here. And what country are they in now? Yeah.
That was the only thing I did get, was why she's in the film. Because she's in the film because her parents died to some general that Quantum is working with to secure the rights to the water in the country.
Ah.
But he never beds her in this film.
Yeah.
Which is like, again, just more dirt in the face of the James Bond tropes. Right? I mean, it's almost License to Kill-esque, where like you never see him bed her. In License to Kill, because of the AIDS scare in the 80s, you never see James Bond have sex with Pam Bouvier or Talisa Soto's character, and Daniel Craig never has sex with Olga Kurylenko in this film.
No, just
best of my knowledge.
Strawberry Fields, right?
Does he even have sex with her?
I think he does.
I think she's like the only one.
Yeah, I like how she shows up in the frickin' trench coat, and I'm just like, are you wearing anything underneath that?
She's more of a Bond girl than Olga Kurylenko is in this film.
Yeah.
I mean, Olga Kurylenko is almost just like Bond's sidekick, not a Bond girl.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Which is a little strange for a Bond film, having someone that Bond doesn't even see as like a possible like sexual, partner.
Yeah.
This film is this film really takes that "this isn't Bond" trope to like the next level.
Right. And to me, it swings too far in that direction, because I'm just like, what the hell am I watching here? And it just felt so convoluted so much of the time, and I just didn't care about anything. I was like, just come on, James, get over Vespa. I don't really care about the rest of this stuff. And just, kill this little froggy dude who makes this exploding hotel. That whole thing, just that set piece. And it didn't even feel like there were like really any good action scenes to it. Like we start off with a big car chase, but I'm like, I really don't know why I'm involved in this car chase. What are the stakes here?
Well, and that's the thing, is because that this is the direct sequel to Casino. I mean, it literally picks up 5 minutes after Casino Royale, with Bond with Mr. White in the back seat of in the trunk of his car.
Right.
Like it feels so strange. You're like, holy shit! Like this is a fucking sequel. Like if you had watched previous Bond films, if you had grown up on Pierce Brosnan and you watched Casino Royale and then you went and saw Quantum, you're like, holy shit! Like this is taking place immediately after. Like I don't even know what to do with myself. Because you've never seen anything like this with James Bond. It's like Star Wars. It's like, holy shit, like this is taking place right afterwards. Like I don't even like what? And I think that right there set people off immediately, because no one knew what to expect with a direct sequel. I think from the get-go, people were automatically taken aback as to what was going on in this film.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially after, like you said, the Casino Royale being such a hefty movie as it is. You'd think you'd be done with it after that. It's kind of got to be a bit of a shock.
And then in this film, it feels like he's all over the place in the world, and you're never given any, like Mike said, and it's so convoluted, you're never given any idea as to why he's doing any of this stuff. Like at one point, he's going to be captured by the U.S. government, so he runs away.
Right.
And then he's at this exploding hotel where he's trying to steal all the water.
Yeah, it felt like as they're showing like the water not coming out of the pipes and stuff, I'm just like, oh man, remember what a good movie Rango is? I'd really rather be watching Rango right now.
so they just took Rango and made it into this movie. I could get behind
Yeah,
that.
Sure, why not?
The plot makes about as much sense, and at least it was more believable in Rango.
Yeah.
And, I think, again, with another real big issue with this film is that, like in Casino, with him not being able to connect with Vesper, you're being convinced in this film that he gave so much shit about Vesper that he's going to these lengths to avenge her. And I didn't buy that at all.
Yeah.
I didn't buy that connection with Vesper in that movie. And then you're going to have a whole movie about him trying to avenge her?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not buying that at all. I can't get behind it. And then, the fact that fucking Spectre would come back and try to retcon these movies together doesn't help this film. This doesn't even help this film anymore.
No.
Because then in Spectre, you see the some of the stuff from this film, and you're like, oh God, this film existed. Like, oh God, like I don't want to remember this film, and now you're forcing me to.
Yeah, I kind of would have been fine had they just gone Casino Royale, Skyfall.
But he has to have that emotional film where he's dealing with Vesper dying.
Yeah.
You need to see the character totally not grow because he never grows. That's the problem.
He's kind of a sociopath, though, which is fine.
Well, I'm okay with them just saying he's a sociopath, but don't try to convince me that he isn't by having an entire film where it's supposed to be Bond connecting with his emotions.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because that's what this film is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my friends in college, because we went and saw this at midnight, which was a mistake.
Oh yeah.
One of my stoner friends was like, "Oh, this movie's great. It's like a more cerebral Bond." I was like, "Oh, you fuck." I was like, "Bro, come on! Like, cerebral and James Bond in the same sentence makes no sense."
Yeah, it's not supposed to.
Even with Daniel Craig's Bond, it doesn't make any sense. Like, at the end of the day, Skyfall, Spectre, Casino Royale are big, dumb action movies. And this movie trying to be something else is a little odd.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the main reasons it fails is because at the end of the day, even if we do maybe want James Bond, the films, to take some risks, this film takes too many and does some stuff with James Bond that I think doesn't serve a purpose in the James Bond world.
Yeah, it's a little excess. I get that.
You are getting no arguments from me when it comes to defending this movie because I just found it indefensible. Just bad all the way through.
And, I've told people that to understand Quantum, you really have to watch Casino Royale and Quantum back to back, which I know setting aside 5.5 hours to watch movies isn't everyone's cup of tea. But for the two movies to make sense together and for Quantum to be not as bad, you do have to watch them together.
Yeah, that makes
because
sense.
if you watch Casino Royale and then say you wait a couple months and you watch Quantum, I don't know how good everyone's memory is here, but I would forget some of the stuff in Casino Royale. And they reference so much of it in Quantum that you almost forget.
Oh, I had to have Wikipedia open.
Right? I mean, the end of Quantum with Bond confronting Vesper's former lover, which is the reason why she protected Bond and died, that is the logical conclusion to Casino Royale.
Yeah.
But it comes 2 hours later in the
at the end of this movie
timeline. Yeah. And if you don't remember from Casino Royale all that stuff, then you won't be able to understand the ending of Quantum. It's just like a movie out of sequence is the real issue.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
boy, it is not a good movie. So
no, it's very like donuts for dinner.
Yeah.
It's very much.
Before we wrap this up, I'm curious, Mike. You're our last guest for James Bond January. Who is your favorite James Bond? And who is your least favorite James Bond?
I think my favorite is George Lazenby. And I think,
and you're not saying that ironically, either.
No, because I still say that On Her Majesty's Secret Service is probably one of the best Bonds, and I really wish he had had a chance to make more Bonds. And least favorite, I grew up in the era of Roger Moore going into Timothy Dalton, and I kind of gave up on the Timothy Dalton ones, not necessarily because of him, but I think because of the Roger Moore stuff and just because of all the times that they would show Octopussy on TV, that is probably my least favorite Bond. And by that stretch, I would say that that Roger Moore is probably my least favorite Bond.
I was actually worried you were going to say Timothy Dalton was your least favorite.
Oof. I'm glad you said George Lazenby, though. I'm really glad.
George Lazenby, I think, is like the Bond everyone forgets.
I liked him a lot.
I thought he did a great job.
He has more emotional vulnerability as the character of James Bond than Daniel Craig, Timothy Dalton, Pierce Brosnan, everyone combined.
Yeah, I agree. He was.
So,
and he had the mirth too, which is great.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just I wish more people had seen George Lazenby's film.
Yeah, me too.
Because I know a lot of people that are huge fans of Bond, and myself included. I had never seen On Her Majesty's Secret Service until we watched all the movies this month. I had never seen it, and I'm glad that I finally sat down and watched it because it's a really great film and a worthy addition to the James Bond canon. And it's almost everything Quantum of Solace wanted to be. It wanted to be this kind of turning James Bond, the normal James Bond story, on its head.
Right.
Because you have James Bond getting married, James Bond showing emotional vulnerability, all sorts of stuff that you don't equate with James Bond. James Bond talking about how he has 3 balls. James Bond breaking the fourth wall, which is still one of the strangest things that happens in that film.
It was weird. But
and real quick, what are y'all's thoughts on Skyfall and Spectre? Since we're not going to get to talk about them on a podcast.
I haven't seen them.
You haven't seen Skyfall?
No,
You should probably keep it that way.
Skyfall might have one of the better Bond songs. It's still not The Spy Who Loved Me or anything. It's still nowhere near that. But I appreciated the Adele song. But I didn't really like the rest of the movie. I didn't like that suddenly we were swinging back the other way so hard, where it was like, oh, here's Q, and here's your gadgets, and here's this, and here's that. And it's just like, oh, for God's sakes. But yet we're going to go low tech when it comes to the end, when they're attacking James Bond at the house and everything, and the whole mystery of James Bond's past, which I don't need to know. I really don't need to know any of that stuff. And I don't need anything that's in that movie, really. I mean, just the way that they set up the why am I blanking on the villain's name?
Oh my God, Javier Bardem.
Yeah, I don't need that. Javier Bardem gets caught and then knows when a train is going to be passing by, so a bomb gets blown up when he just happens to be. Just.
Are you talking about Skyfall or Dark Knight?
Talking about Skyfall. Just.
Oh, I could have sworn you were talking about Dark Knight there for a second. Getting captured and then bombs going off and getting
Yeah. It's the same bullshit. Just the same bullshit. I would say that the Joker is a much more compelling villain than the Javier Bardem from that one. And I don't need him, having been poisoned and having mother issues with M and all that stuff. And yeah. And in the last one, Spectre, where suddenly James Bond has a Scooby gang that's helping him out, I just didn't need that shit either. And taking down a helicopter with a handgun was another thing where I'm just like, really?
Oh my God, that's an indefensible thing right there. You can't defend that.
And you've got that great helicopter thing at the beginning of Spectre, this really good opening set piece. He tells the girl, I'll be back in a few minutes. He never goes back to the girl. Go back to the girl.
But he's cold and icy James Bond, Daniel Craig. He's blonde haired. He can get anyone.
I don't need any of that stuff. Give me more Daniel Craig in the next Lara Croft movie. I don't need him as James Bond.
I agree. I think that Skyfall, I don't know why people have such love for it. It's okay. It's okay. Not good or great. But I have had people consistently, I don't want to name names because I don't want to call people out, but I know people that will tell me that's their favorite James Bond.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just like, it's those same people that the movie was made for. It's the people that hated the Bond shit. So they wanted this non-Bond shit film, but then they wanted some of the Bond shit in it. And it's just like, can't have it both ways, and then you say that it's your favorite. But the whole movie, it's as convoluted as Bond gets, but people just give it a pass. Right. And that's Skyfall and Spectre is just, some of the stuff in Spectre is just so goofy and dumb. Like the end climax or just the villain. Everything about that movie just comes off as goofy and wonky that you're just kind of like, what is going on here?
Well, and I talked about the problem of having Bond in a Austin Powers world, a world where Austin Powers has happened. And that Blofeld and Bond end up being kind of like brothers and stuff. I'm just like, well, that was the end of the third Austin Powers film.
They're literally just playing into the parody.
Yeah.
It just, like we said, it's just you can't have it one way and then want it to be the other. You can't say I hate the Bond tropes, but then want some of that in there and be okay when it's in there and just overlook it. We want a rebooted Bond that's serious, but then in Spectre and Skyfall, they put some of that stuff in and no one seems to care all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't get it. And yeah, Sean, really I would not avail yourself to go see those films. I think you're a better person for having not seen them. Oh, my God. Well, let's start with Casino Royale. Mike, skip it or watch it in best performance?
For me, watch it. I still really like this film. Best performance, I like Daniel Craig in it.
What about you, Sean?
Oh, I like Casino Royale, but I like them. Well, let me put it this way: I like Casino Royale, so I would say watch it. I liked the newness in that movie. Best performance, God, I guess I really did like Mads Mikkelsen. Really liked. I liked how creepy, weird he was, and it was I thought it was a great villain for the kind of movie it was.
I'm gonna say watch it. Again, watch it just watch it, but in the back of your mind, remember that this is a reboot of James Bond, and this is about as non-James Bond as James Bond can get outside of ruining it completely with Quantum. So I would say watch it, but just remember, where they're coming from with this, and don't go into it expecting to be James Bond of old. And best performance, I like Giancarlo Giannini as Mathis because you never kind of know where he's coming from because, at some point you're like, oh, he turned on Bond. So I like him, and, maybe this is me making up for when he was in Hannibal. So, but Giancarlo Giannini, definitely. I think is an interesting character to kind of have this guy who you're not sure where he's coming from with his relationship to Bond. So what do you guys think the Rotten Tomatoes score for Casino Royale is?
My guess is 86%.
I'm going to say 73.
95.
Wow.
Casino Royale disposes of the silliness and gadgetry that plagued recent James Bond outings, and Daniel Craig delivers what fans and critics have been waiting for: a caustic, haunted, intense reinventation of 007.
That kind of sounds like I wrote it.
He's caustic and haunted.
Yeah, that's exactly what I liked.
Jesus Christ. Let's move on to Quantum of Solace. Mike, skip it or watch it in best performance?
Skip it. Best performance, I don't know if there is one. Dame Judi Dench.
Love her.
And she's the only carryover from Pierce Brosnan's time.
Yeah. Which
is a little strange.
Well, and then that they felt the need to then murder her in
Skyfall.
Yeah. I was like, great, thanks.
Bye. Back to the male authority characters again.
Exactly. Yeah, now we can.
Because that totally wasn't an interesting didichotomy or anything.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, they could have played the mother thing off very interesting in Skyfall, but no. This whole idea of the former 00 agents coming back and being bad and being all effed up and everything, it could have been such a good thing, but every time they do it, you end up with like the Robert Carlyle or Javier Bardem characters, and it's like, yeah, no, you guys need to work on that thing.
The only time they've done it well is with Sean Bean as 006 and GoldenEye. Yeah. Sean, skip it or watch in best performance?
I mean, I still say if you watched Casino Royale, watch it. I mean, I consider both of them sort of especially after this last week, sort of like the same one big, I guess, amoeba of a movie. And I kind of, I see like this one is much more, it's more surface. It's shallow. I feel like they felt bad for setting it at a poker game for too long, and then they felt like they needed to overcompensate with a bunch of bloody violence and emotional indulgence, as I called it. So I think it's a fun ride. Definitely not anything. If you're expecting a Bond movie, it's just not the same. Like you guys said, it swings way the wrong way. But out of all, it's hard to pick a favorite in this one because I really mostly enjoyed the scenes with Judi Dench and Daniel Craig. So, I mean, Judi Dench was great. I liked Gemma as Strawberry Fields, but she was pretty small part. So I don't know. It's tough. I guess go ahead.
I agree with you, Sean, that if you've seen Casino Royale, you have to watch this movie. And I know Mike is probably sitting there like, I don't know. Mike's already left the call.
Click. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Hanged up. But I feel like you have to watch it because it's the logical conclusion to the story that is left kind of hanging at the end of Casino Royale. That being said, it's such a weird movie for James Bond that you almost kind of have to suffer through it as opposed to enjoy it. You're not going to enjoy this movie, but you should watch it. Best performance. I don't even know. I guess Matthew Elmerick, just because he's in this movie. I mean, he lends such a quality of who he is to this film, but they don't give him enough to do. I mean, what was anyone expecting with a film directed by the guy who directed Finding Neverland and Monsters Ball? I don't understand sometimes the people they bring on to direct Bond films. It's a little strange to me. Like Mark Forster, he's better doing character dramas than James Bond films. And they tried to make a character drama James Bond film and it backfired. So there you go. What do you guys think it has on Rotten Tomatoes?
I say 66%.
Yeah, I'll say even probably, I'd say like 74%.
65.
Whoa.
65. One off. Brutal and breathless, Quantum of Solace delivers tender emotions along with frenetic action. But coming on the heels of Casino Royale, it's still a bit of a disappointment. Those first couple words have no place in a James Bond film.
Yeah, and I also don't think that they're as tender as they are in Casino Royale even.
Tender emotion. Oh man, those words don't need to be in a James Bond thing. Like, tender emotions. I mean, they could if they did it right.
Yeah, but it just
falls flat on its face.
They have to tell us more than they show us.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about you guys, and since this is the end of James Bond month for us, do you guys feel like Craig should stick around for one more film?
I personally, I don't see how it can get any worse than it was.
Spectre.
I mean, it was, and I know some people just love that movie. They were just eating it up with a spoon, man. If they're going to keep Christoph Waltz as Blofeld, and it feels like they're going to have to.
And they've said they would if Daniel Craig sticks on.
Right. Then I was going to say then they'll have Daniel Craig do that. Otherwise, they're going to have to recast Blofeld or recast Bond, and it's just going to be really kind of awkward, especially because they have this whole continuity thing. It feels like they've written themselves into a box now, and they have no place to go because now they're trying to wedge all these things into one big, long story, and it's like it doesn't need to be. You don't need to have this as one. They should be episodic. So I really don't care if he comes back or not.
Well, and I mean, if Daniel Craig if he comes back, he's essentially throwing them a life preserver.
Yeah.
Saying, I'll stick around for one more so you guys can, so future scriptwriters can face this problem, not current ones.
I hope that he kind of fucks him over and just sets sail.
For me personally, I think that that's the best thing that they can do here is just, finish this out. It's done now. James Bond rides off into the sunset, and they just reboot James Bond again.
Yeah.
Because that's the only thing that they can do now is just reboot it again.
Yeah.
Well,
and maybe that's how they keep the longevity of the franchise in the future is make 4 films and then just reboot it over and over again.
Why don't they just go ahead and set this in both the Marvel, DC, and Star Wars universe?
And have like Iron Man show up?
Yeah.
Why not?
Or have Han Solo show up and be like, hey, remember when we fought those aliens in the Wild West?
I do remember that.
That would be kind of awesome.
Oh, God. I think the real question is what happens to Daniel Craig after this film? It's not like he really does anything else.
Yeah, I mean, right?
Well, I think he's a great actor, and he's been in some good stuff, but he's been in a lot of shit, too.
The only other thing I like him in is Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Yeah, maybe they'll finally make 2 and 3 of those.
Yeah, right. Wink, wink, nod, nod. I doubt it.
I could have told anybody that there's no way you're keeping Fincher for 3 movies.
I didn't understand them thinking that was ever gonna. Yeah. Come on, David Fincher hard enough to get David Fincher to do one movie, let alone a trilogy. Come on, you're on drugs.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Which is too bad because that movie was really good. So I thought it was good, and I might be in the small minority here, but
it just felt like an echo of the first film, so I was okay with that.
Yeah. Well, those first films were pretty good. So, before I talk about next month's theme and where we're going to be talking about in February, Mike, I know there's a little podcast you might want to plug.
Yeah, it's called. No, I was going to pull something out of my ass.
It's called Serial. I don't know if you've ever heard of this.
Each week, we're sponsored by MailChimp, and no, it's.
I use MailChimp. Do you use MailChimp?
I've never heard of it. Yes. MailChimp?
Kimp? That's some fucking serial nerd shit, right? Follow this with the MailChimp fucking remix. Oh my God.
Yeah, I do a podcast from week to week called The Projection Booth over at projection-booth.com. And if you've enjoyed hearing me spout off about James Bond, you can hear some of my other cockamamie movie theories over at Projection Booth.
What about you, Sean?
As always, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Seanifer, and on Facebook, Sean Liang.
And you can find me on Twitter at Kulturecast. And if you like what you're listening to now, we have a bunch of other podcasts, not just James Bond, I promise. Over at cultureshock.com, along with some movie reviews and video game reviews. Next week, we're going to be right at the beginning of February, and we're going to be talking about the Oscar-nominated movies for this year. Including only white folks, according to some. Never mind, that's not racist, guys. Next Monday, we're going to be talking about Ridley Scott's Comedy in Space, so the Golden Globes call it, The Martian. And then next Thursday, we're going to be talking about Mad Max Fury Road, which I know some people think is the best thing to ever happen to film since film. Big thanks to you, Mike, for sitting down and talking Quantum and Casino with us. I'm sorry you had to watch Quantum again.
It's okay. I just appreciate being on the show, guys. It's always good to talk with you.